Hello everyone and welcome back to Project Ozone Titan Mode. This is episode 37 and I'm going to start out by taking a look at the machine that I built in last episode in order to make EMC. I will tell you that it has been a resounding success. You will actually find out how successful in a little bit. There are a couple of things that I've changed about it. One is I'm really not happy with this setup with the retrievers because it doesn't balance the inputs very well. I'm going to have to come up with a better solution. I do have it functioning right now, but there was one occasion when it backed up quite a bit, and it just strikes me as extremely vulnerable to not necessarily keeping all of the chests supplied, because one chest has the potential to hog all of the input. So I've got to come up with a better solution to this. At the moment it is working just fine, but I am going to come up with a better solution to it. Now, one thing I did do is I changed it so that instead of feeding nether stars to the copper generation, which is actually how EMC gets shipped over to these over here, I told it to ship yellorium out of it to that. So there are only 2 chests now that are demanding nether stars, where before it was 3. That's actually working out sort of okay. It's not really where I kind of want to go with it over the longer term, but it is working. I've just got to figure out a way to do it a little nicer. Now, I did expand this machine. When I set it up initially, I set it up with 12 phytogenic insulators. There are the 12 of them right there, but I've now got 12 on the other side. So it's got 24 phytogenic insulators. In order to keep up with the demand for PhytoGrow, I did have to change out these machines just a little bit. I changed them to the hardened versions instead of the basic versions. Could have upgraded them more, not really necessary at this point. On the pulverizer, I told it to work faster. I gave it a secondary reception coil augment, which increases the processing speed, but also increases the amount of energy used. On the induction smelter, I didn't need it to work faster. I needed it to produce more slag. So instead, I gave it this integrated, actually the secondary sieve, which gives an 11% increase in the chance of a secondary, so it produced more slag. So at this point, I do have plenty of slag coming through, and so I'm actually backed up on it and having no trouble producing enough PhytoGrow to run 24 machines. Now, I did a little timing test on this to see how quickly this machine was producing EMC. And the answer is, at the moment, when you look at what's shipped over to the other side through the Tesseract, in other words, we've already deducted for making fuel for the reactor and for making all these materials that are needed to make PhytoGrow. Once that's been deducted and you just look at what's come through on the other side, it's producing about 275,000 EMC per second. And if you think about that, we could triple the production of this machine to use rich PhytoGrow instead of regular PhytoGrow. So at that point, you could just add a few more phytogenic insulators after doing that, and you could probably get 1 million EMC per second out of it. I may do that. I'm not doing it with any urgency right now because I actually do have plenty of EMC at the moment, as you'll see in just a bit. Now, on the reactor itself, I mentioned last time that it seemed to be producing more power than I was expecting for being at minimum power. Well, the answer is it wasn't actually at minimum power. It was at probably 1 or 2%. Right now I've got it running at 1%, and at 1% this reactor produces 1.35 million RF per tick. And it's running rather cool, 275 degrees centigrade, which is pretty cool for a passive reactor. What I actually found is that if you set it to minimum, the temperature will go all the way down to 21 degrees centigrade. In other words, just 1 degree above completely cold, and it will generate several thousand RF per tick at that rate, which may not actually be enough to run all these machines at this point. So I'm not going to take it down at that. I'm going to leave it at 1% until I find that I need more power. I did need more power earlier for something I'll show you in just a little bit, but I So I put this Tesseract here to ship power out away from this reactor, and I cranked it all the way up to 2%. So yeah, I'm not going to be hurting for power for a while because of this machine. And of course it is kept nicely and continuously fueled from over here, so I'm not having any problems at all with that. So how much EMC have I been generating? Well, let's take a look at the quest book, because I have 20 quests with unclaimed rewards at this point. Let's see which ones they are. In Epsilon, I have completed Demon Steel's Tier 8 through 11, all of them. So let's go ahead and claim those. Okay. Looks like I got a legendary reward bag with a vacuum chest. Doesn't seem too legendary. 2 greater reward bags with some additional stuff I probably don't need all that badly. Did get a full heart. And an epic reward bag with something that isn't all that epic. Okay, so I got all that. Where are the other 16 quests? Well, the other 16 quests that I completed are all in chapter Mu, and it is singularities. I completed all of the singularities from lead through titanium, which is all of them. Now, emerald and diamond had already been completed basically just by virtue of receiving those singularities as quest rewards. But I completed all the rest of them, and importantly, aside from having enough EMC to generate all the materials for this, I also had enough EMC that I should be able to go ahead and make the infinity stars that are needed for the transmutation tablet. It's worth mentioning that the Infinity Star does have an EMC value, but you cannot craft it in one of these because there is a cap on how much EMC one of these energy condensers will buffer. I actually went and fired up a test world and tested it and made sure before I spent 160,000 more or less nether stars on this, and I haven't spent them yet. I will set them up this episode to get started on that. But I did check it, and you cannot generate one and then generate the others. If you could, it would be far cheaper, but you just can't. You're kind of stuck with creating 4 of them for the transmutation table. So I don't know if once you have the transmutation table, if it will store more EMC or not. It may, it may not. I'll just have to try it and find out once I've got one. Okay, so yes, I do have over 160,000 nether stars aside from all that other stuff that I finished. Let me go ahead and cut while I accept all these rewards because it's going to be a very long process. So let me just request all these and I'll be right back. Or finish them and I'll be right back. Okay, they've all been turned in. And I've got 16 legendary reward bags. Hopefully I get something in them that is worthy of the name legendary. Let's take a look. Printed circuit boards, not legendary. Diamond apples. Mana lenses. Zavicio helmet. Chunk loaders. More chunk loaders. Growth pulsers. Ender chest and tank. Skullfire sword. That's interesting. What is that? Beheads skeletons and scorches them black. I know that it's got a fairly expensive recipe in the Dire crafting table, but I don't think I actually need to make one for anything, and I don't need this ability to get, basically, from the sound of it, to get wither skeleton skulls from any skeleton. Artifact diamond armor. Don't need that. And then flamethrower. So really not too impressed for 16 epic ones, but some of this stuff will be useful in some way. Let me put it all away. and we'll move on to today's next topic. So I'll meet you back in the overworld. Okay, here I am at my neutronium compressor. I need to make 4 infinity stars, which will involve 162,504 nether stars, which I have all counted out in these 2 caches. So let me take these and plop them up here. And it says that it is, it's counting away. So I'll have to come back and check this in a minute. Let's go off to the next stop, which is the Aroma Mining Age, because I want to look at something there. Okay, I have done some mining over here. You can see this big plane of stone. And what I've been mining with is this machine right here, which is the Mechanism digital miner. And I've just got it set up with a source for power over here that also sends the materials that it mined back. And it's got an energy condenser up here that's producing stone that's being used as a fill material. Now, let's talk just a little bit about what this machine does and why you might or might not use it. First of all, this is an extremely flexible quarry. You can tell it a huge amount of stuff about what you want to do. First of all, you can tell it, do you want to silk touch or not? If you do tell it to silk touch, it's pretty expensive energetically because it's going to take like 7 times as much energy or something like that. You can also configure whether it's ejecting or pulling automatically from attached inventories, but that's not really where we're getting all that important. You can upgrade it with energy and speed upgrades. Speed upgrades make it run faster but dramatically increase energy consumption. Energy upgrades reduce energy consumption. So if you use speed upgrades, you probably want to use energy upgrades as well. Although if you max them both, you will still be falling behind on energy. And the configuration, it has a very complicated configuration. You can tell it what radius to mine out from the machine. So that's set to 18 right now, which means it's going to go out 18 blocks from the center of the machine and mine out in every direction up to 18 blocks away. You can tell it the minimum Y level to mine out at, which this is at 0, so the bottom of the world. The maximum, which is 79. If we actually look at where I'm standing here, my eye level is at 80, so 79 is basically ground level here, so that's why it's set to 79. But you can have it mine higher than the machine if you would like. Then you can tell it to invert or not. And what invert does is it inverts the sense of all the filters that are configured over here. In other words, right now this tells it what it can mine, but if I was to hit inverse mode, that would tell it what it can't mine and would permit it to mine everything else. Okay, so looking at these filters, there are a variety of ways of setting them up. This is an OR dictionary filter, and I have set it up to basically mine OR star, which means anything that if we were to look at the OR dictionary entry for it, starts with OR. So if I just look at iron ore here, for example, the OR dictionary is this thing that says OD up there. So it's OD or iron. So this matches iron ore. If we look at this mercury iron ore, it's also OD or iron, so it matches that. If we look at nether iron ore, that's OD or nether iron, but it still starts with OR, so it matches that too. And so it's matching all that. It's sort of showing what blocks it matches over here. If you wanted to really focus on it, you could see, but of course it doesn't have a tooltip to tell you, so you probably don't want to depend on that for an OR dictionary. Just know what you put in here. The other thing is you can tell it to require a replacement block, and the replacement block in this case is stone. So whenever it grabs a piece of iron ore out from underground, or copper ore, or whatever ore it matches on this filter, it's going to replace it with stone. And because I've said require replace, the machine will literally stop if it doesn't have a stone block to replace it with. That's what this filter means. So you can set up multiple filters. There are a whole bunch of different filters you can set up with it. You can set up an arbitrarily long list. I don't know if it has a limit or what that limit would be if it does. Well, it has to have a limit because you would eventually run out of memory on the machine, but that would be millions of entries, so that's not really a practical limit. But I don't know if it has a smaller limit than that. I haven't run it. I've got 5 of these entries here, so one of them was the filter you just saw. This one is a filter for a specific material. If we look at this one basically says to replace all grass blocks with stone. And to do this, I think I just dropped a grass block right here to tell it which one to do. I had one in my inventory and we went with that. There's also an item filter. This basically was for sticky ore. It's actually about the same as the other one. It does have a fuzzy mode option here. I don't know what that does. So yeah, here's an ore dictionary filter, and this one is specifically picking out things that start with dense. So it's pulling out dense ores, like this dense ore iron right here, for example. So that's how you configure this machine. You could go and just put a filter in there that had a stone block in it and then invert the sense of it, and that just says pull everything that isn't stone. It used to be that your replacement block was on here rather than on each individual filter. Since it has been moved, I don't know how you tell it which specific block to use as a replacement block. There's probably still a way to do it. I don't know it. In any case, that's this machine. Certainly, if you want to use it for that flexible purpose, then my suggestion would be that you do a little more research in somebody else's videos, because I'm not going to cover it in that much depth. But let's just say at this point that I hope I've shown that it is a very flexible mining machine. You can mine with it very well, and it has a lot of options, more options than any other quarry I know of. That said, there's a reason not to use this machine like I've done here with all of this mining, and that is this machine is a huge power hog, and that may be acceptable if you've got a whole lot of power and want the flexibility. And I actually probably will go ahead and continue to use this machine, but I'm going to use it for a slightly different purpose. I'm going to use it mostly just to replace grass with stone at the surface level, and then I will use the extra utilities interquarry to go ahead and quarry out all of the underground materials from here on in this dimension when I use quarries. And the reason for that is because the interquarry is much more efficient. It's faster. When I say efficient, it's efficient in terms of power used per block mined. It is much less flexible. It's going to replace everything with dirt and grass. And that is actually why I would use this machine to go ahead and alter the surface to basically replace all the grass with stone, so that I can see where I've already mined out with the interquarry. Because if you just operate an interquarry in this mining dimension, it's actually very hard to tell where you've already quarried, and you can employ tricks like going and marking things various ways, but it gets to be a little bit tedious to do that. I'm thinking that it will probably work much better just to use this machine to mine out the widest area possible of grass and go with it from there. So that's what I'm going to use this machine for. There's also an achievement I need to use this for. You're supposed to operate one of these in the deep dark. I've been mining with the interquarry in the deep dark and have already gotten a huge amount of stuff. Having said all of that, we're actually getting pretty close to the end of the point where I'm going to be interested in doing any quarrying at all for materials. At least unless it's in some special age like an RF Tools age that specifically is designed to produce materials with massive amounts of EMC. There's just not enough EMC under the ground in a dimension like this to justify spending a huge amount of time doing it. Now, I will still mine out some area in here because I'd like to get everything removed from the ground before building a base in this area. And so I probably will do some stuff like that. That's going to be kind of incidental. Now, coming back over here, since I mentioned achievements, this resonant energy cell is full. So I have officially filled a resonant energy cell using magnetic craft power. And that is an achievement in the achievement book. So let me just grab this. Use magnetic craft to fill a resonant energy cell without the creative energy block. Done. So we'll check that off and we're done with it, and I can just take this resonant energy cell and return it back to my regular dimension. So I will join you in the overworld shortly. Okay, so just looking here at my neutronium compressor, I'm about halfway done generating my infinity stars. I will not be crafting the tablet today. I will set up the recipe in this block between episodes. So let's look at what other quests I would really like to do in this episode. Certainly one of them is in the mechanism chapter. I want to go ahead and produce the better solar panel. And the reason for doing that is because it is a necessary component of, I forget what the thing is called. It's like a desalination plant or an evaporation plant or something like that. It's a mechanism block that's used to produce brine. And we're going to need 4 maximum sized ones, I think, for... where is that? There's an achievement for building, like, yeah, create 3 or more maximum size thermal evaporation plants right there. So I actually do want to go ahead and do that. So let's come over here. I know that as a component it requires a bunch of those. We'll just come in here, solar, and we'll just click this and see what we might be missing. It's not that one that it's missing, it's a different one. It's this solar generator right here from Mechanism. It's that one right there, but it's got a charge on it, I bet. It doesn't say that it does. Let me come over here and craft one. Okay, so it's got 2 of them now, but for some reason I don't know why it's not pulling that. Let's go ahead and just put them in there though, and I'll set up the recipe just like that. And I need to tell it to make 2 more of these, I guess, because it's probably a crafting combine. It might be a detection, I didn't look. That's just weird because it does not want to do that. Maybe I don't have the right number of enriched alloy. No, I don't. There we go. Let's take and make a bunch of those. Okay, so I've crafted it. Let's come over here to the quest book. It says it's completed. So just pick a reward bag and toss it away. This one's an epic reward bag. Did we get something good here? Packing tape. That is not epic. Alright. That's actually getting very close to finishing this chapter. I've just got this pneumatic craft thing left here. I'm not going to do that one in this episode. What else would actually be nice to get done in this one? Let's make some progress on this chain. This is the Solar Flux Panel 3, which requires a bunch of solar panels, machine frame from RF Tools, redstone conductance, solar panel 2. So none of this stuff on the bottom is of any challenge at all. I've already got all that stuff set up in the system. The photovoltaic cell, though, requires a mirror and lapis in an induction smelter. Let me go ahead and set that up. Do I have an induction smelter set up on here? I do. And it doesn't have that recipe set up. So let's go ahead and pick. That was a mirror, and it wanted the solar flux one, and a piece of lapis. Just like that. We'll switch it to a processing pattern, and I will have to go craft the appropriate item by tossing it into the induction furnace down here. It's probably going to be set up. It's right there. Okay, so it crafted that item. And I should be able to find... That's not the right one. What was this thing called again? A photovoltaic cell. So there it is right there. We'll put it there. And put the pattern in. And there we go. So I'm going to need 3 of those. And that is not going to get me what I need. So 2 more. And then for the rest of this, this is the solar panel 3, so looks like I have all the components except for the coil. I don't remember, did it want the reception or the conductance? I'll just make 1 of each, because they will eventually get used. Okay, so there's our solar panel 3. We can just pull it out of there, and that will complete that recipe. We'll get the reward and an item dislocator. So while this is still here, let me pull out an encoded pattern and plop that in here. Now, I'm probably not going to make a whole bunch of solar panel 3s using the crafting in this system because that would be very slow. This panel does have EMC, however. Solar panel 3 requires 179,287 EMC, so it's a little bit expensive. Essentially a little bit more than 1 nether star per solar panel 3. But making it this way would actually obviate a lot of some of the weird stuff that goes in here. I'm going to have to look and see if maybe that's worth it or not. The solar panel 1 is 73.77. It looks like actually this can get pretty pricey, but there are 4 of these in here, so it's reasonable based on the price of the solar panel 2. I just don't know if the solar panel 2 is reasonably priced. It does unfortunately have alumite and capacitors in it though, and capacitors, alumite's a little tough, not impossible. I've got quite a bit of it from cows at this point. That's going to be too slow a source. Obviously, alumite can also be made using EMC. So I'm just going to have to research and see if this actually, if it makes sense to make solar panel 3s using EMC, or if it might be more efficient to make one of these lower tiers and upgrade them. I don't know. It looks like it's probably not more efficient to make the 2s than to make the 3s, but it might be more efficient to make the 1s than to make the 2s. I'll find out, and we'll have to make a decision from there. Okay, so there is one other sort of power-related one that I'm going to do today, and it's kind of incidental because I don't need it at this point. But I'm going to go ahead and make this culinary generator because I've been sitting with the supplies for a long time. So in order to craft this, it's really only a detection task, but I'll just craft it. I only ever need one of them. I am going to need 8 of these culinary generators. And I'm going to need the advanced node. And I've already got one sitting right here, the transfer node hyper energy. And I'll put that there. Now I need to go downstairs and get my other 2 culinary generators. So I'll just come down here and grab them. They're sitting right there. Alright. And they'll probably have a charge on them, and they may not work nicely in the recipe for that reason. So let me just go ahead and do that. Can we pull it out now? Yes. Okay, so that should have finished that quest. And at this point, this does not generate enough power to make it worthwhile, but I've been running them for a long time. I've got plenty of extra wheat. There's no harm in running it, so I'm just going to take them and bring it back down here and put it right there. It should fuel up and start consuming this toast right away. So it's generating 2048 RF per tick, which is totally insignificant at this point. Alright, so let me see if there's anything else I want to do today, because I think we're beginning to get a little close to wrapping it up. I think I've mostly accomplished what I wanted. And not too interested in any of that. Alpha, I just need to finish off at some point. Britannia is what's left on here, and I'm not going to do it today. This one is also something that I don't see any pressing need to do today. SATA, quantum flux. I do need to go ahead and finish some of this quantum flux at some point, but it's not immediately pressing. Applied Energistics still has a few things to finish. They're also not that necessary. RF tools. That's weird. Why is this? Oh. It's blinking because you can kill the Antlion Overlord over and over. This is a repeatable quest. So you actually can get a mining multi-tool more than once. That is good to know if you happen to screw it up and use up your mining multi-tool. So definitely good to know. Not really necessary at this point, and I definitely do not want to go and clear out that whole dungeon to get the Antlion Overlord again. Iota, big reactors, and galactic craft. Let's make the cyanite reprocessor. I'm going to need it in order to progress on the other stuff. I don't really need it for its normal thing. So cyanite reprocessor, it has some of these tungsten heat coils. I think I've set up some of those in the system. Let's see what we might be missing on this. Looks like nothing. There we go. Okay, you pump water into this, and your cyanite, which is used fuel from big reactors, and it will produce plutonium. And the only reason at this point for creating this is, in fact, to get that first plutonium ingot. For the simple reason that with Project E, you can just convert everything as you need it anyway. Without any, it's not more efficient than the other way. Okay. So got that out of the way, and that opens up plutonium, which I'm going to need a stack of plutonium. I can probably produce a whole stack of it. I think I've got the 2 stacks of cyanite that would require. But either produce one and make a whole stack using EMC, or just produce an unlimited number of them. I'd like to get started with Galactic Craft. I wonder what's involved in this circuit fabricator. It looks like I should have most of that. I may not have the electric furnace or the electrosilicon. I think I will go ahead and create those between episodes and be ready to do this next time. Electrosilicon is actually going to involve creating a pretty, it's a multi-step process. It's not really just awful, but you've got to create electrotene silicon compound, which means you've got to have silicon, which means you need to create this silicon boule, or however it's pronounced, and use it with a diamond saw. And that's going to come from sandy coal compound, sand with a block of coal. So it's not expensive. It's just a little elaborate to do. The other piece, I haven't really looked at the electric furnace from Magneticraft. That doesn't look too bad. I think I've got all that stuff set up in the system. But I do want to get started with Galacticraft. There are a lot of machines here that have to be crafted to get started with it. And once I've got that set up, I can launch myself into space and probably forget something important, but I'll try not to. And then I can establish my space station and get started on the moon and exploring the various planets. The other one that I really want to get going on sometime soon is RF tools, because it will be another source of EMC. Okay, I'm planning on setting up the transmutation table between episodes. I'm not going to do it now. I don't know if the alchemical bag is really somewhere here. It's pretty simple if you've got the alchemical chest, but I'm not going to do it right now. And I think that's going to do it for today, because I am sort of where I need to be. Making good progress, and that should continue. There's no shortage of materials at all. Since I last used up all of my growth pulsars, it looks like I've got about 2 billion EMC in growth pulsars just sitting here waiting to be used. So I do want to thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. If you did, then certainly I would appreciate a like, subscribe, comment, or share, and I will see you next time.